Welcome back to Operator Syndrome. I'm Patrick here with Steve as always, and we're in the middle of Ranger School. But before we get started, before I talk about Ranger rucksacks, Steve has got something.
Well, that was a perfect segue because it's about rucking.
Mm-hmm.
So in my new and approved attempt to de-jargonize some stuff, when we talk about rucking, we're talking about walking, patrolling with a heavy, what's called a rucksack, it's like a backpack,
Yeah.
and gear. So I realized, these things just flow off our tongues. And many of you, if you're familiar with military parlance, you'll know rucking is walking at a brisk pace, usually with a lot of weight. And it's also called something else. Sometimes we'll call humping it or hump it,
Mm-hmm.
which has a different connotation too altogether. But we're not, to hump it means to just haul ass with a ruck and grind it out and get to the target. That's kind of generic for that
I
too.
think I think the Marines call it hiking, which is just
Hiking
doesn't. I think so.
just doesn't carry the same
It doesn't.
beat.
So, any Marines, if you're listening, clarify
There we
for us.
go.
But I'm pretty sure they call it hiking, which is just weird. Um, So, okay, so about rucks. So the interesting thing about, and I'm still in the first phase here, my second go at the first phase. So the interesting thing about the rucks is that so for your timed event during Rap Week, the the 12 miles in 3 hours,
Yeah.
that's like a 35, 40 pound ruck. It actually gets weighed, and usually it's not a problem for it being overweight. Usually people try to try to cut some weight off and they end up under somehow.
Yeah.
Usually it's because of water. They'll
Yeah.
weigh, so usually they'll say, okay, 35 pounds dry, which means before you add on like
Right.
your four quarts of water or whatever. So the thing about the rucks when you're patrolling, when you're actually doing the FTX's field exercises, is that nobody's weighing them, but they're heavy. They're very, very heavy. So you're walking out in the woods, you sleep outside. You don't have tents. You just sleep in like your bivy sack. So if anyone's not a camper, it's like you've got like sort of like an impermeable layer kind of, and then you got like the soft sleeping bag system. And you got all kinds of stuff and gear. You also have water, food that you're carrying out, and then you have ammo.
Ammo.
And ammo is how they get you. It's one of the ways they get you. So again, this is a combat leadership. Like there are administrative pieces to being a combat leader. So when you're in your patrol base setting up for the next day, you request ammo from higher up, and on paper, like you would say, okay, I need there. As with everything in the military, there's like a standard for what you need when you go out. There's a standard for how many rounds each rifleman should have, machine gunner should have. There's a number. There's a set number that you ask for, and so what happens is in the morning, as you're in your patrol base doing patrol base activities, you get resupplied with water and food and ammo. Well, one of the things we kept seeing was every day we would get an entire combat load of ammo, even if we didn't request it.
Oh,
So if you did a reconnaissance the day before,
oh yeah.
how much did you shoot in a reconnaissance ideally?
A successful one? None.
None. None. Everyone hear that? None. You do a reconnaissance mission, you shouldn't be shooting anything because you're just sneaking and looking and taking notes and whatever. You shouldn't be shooting.
Nope.
Okay. The next day, morning, oh, good morning, Ranger students. Here's a full squad combat load of ammo. You're like, well, we have a
We
full
already have one
combat.
of those.
Here's an additional full combat load of ammo. And so
Oh,
it
man.
got to the now, I think at the beginning you don't quite catch on, and again, like even though you're in a squad of 15 people, if you're a rifleman, if you're not planning, like you're just kind of existing, to be quite honest, because
Yeah.
again, you're not really eating, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later, and you're not sleeping, you're really not sleeping when you're out in the
Yeah.
FTX. So someone will come by in the morning and hand you a full combat load of ammo, and you'll be like, dude, what the heck? Why do they keep asking for ammo? Just tell them that we have the ammo we need for today's mission. And so
Hmm.
you get kind of come to find out, it's like it didn't matter what we what we asked for, what we said we had on hand. We were getting a full combat load of ammo. And so um And so eventually, like as we matured, we'd figure out like, okay, when we get in contact, like when we get to shoot, we really need to shoot.
Yeah.
Like, and that was the idea. So people would be like, "Hey, give me the machine gun today, because when we
Yeah.
do this ambush, I'm just gonna go like hog wild, like just go
Yeah.
full cyclic, trigger back, da, 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 just hold it for
Yeah.
as long as you can to try to get rid of some of the weight." And
Oh
like,
yeah.
and guys will do, and you can get in trouble for this. Guys would be like, take some of the belt, like no one's looking, try to toss it off into the woods. Like the ammo was a big problem for us. It was a
Yeah.
huge problem, and the weight became unbelievable. You
Heavy,
know,
heavy, heavy.
one of the guys that I was in my squad that I got close to was a Marine Scout sniper. And like for anyone who knows anything about people who properly do like reconnaissance scouting missions, like
Mm-hmm.
those guys, they're known for having really heavy weight, right? And so when we first started out, he'd do the Marine thing and he'd say, "Hey, I've had way heavier rucks than this, doing my scout sniper thing." I'm like, "Okay, okay." But eventually he was like, "Yeah, okay, we've gone to something. We're doing something new here. Like this is unbelievable, the amount of weight." Like the weight is not it's not something like you could pick up your high school backpack and throw it on
Yeah.
your back. It
No,
gets heavy to the point where
yeah.
you have to lay it back on the ground. You have to lean back
Right.
and you strap into it
Strap it in and
while it's
roll
on the
over
ground and then roll over,
and get up. Or you have two guys like
or
heaving
you
on
have
the
people
back.
help you.
Yeah.
But again, tired like it becomes like when everyone has a ruck like that. And by the way, you've been doing this for like 60 days. Like that's not you're doing it just by yourself. So you're just like this skeleton at the end, just
Yeah.
like strapping into this, like definitely over 100 pounds. How much did it weigh? Don't know. They didn't weigh it. They didn't care to weigh it. They didn't care if it
A
was
lot of
heavy,
weight.
but it was unbelievable amounts of weight. So
Did you guys spread out? One of the things we used to do,
mhm,
we would spread out the belt fed ammo among patrol members, not make just well, see, we carried it as a single belt fed. Your
mhm.
crew serve guys, your three-man fire team, would they have to carry all of the belt fed or would they spread it
We
out?
would we would cross load. We would cross
Okay.
load ammo, and that becomes one of those things. You're tired, you're hungry, you're cranky, right? And then some guy comes along and says, "Hey, take another belt of 7.62
Yeah.
ammo." You're like, "I'm not taking this. I'm full. Like, look at my ruck. I can't put anything else in here." And right? And like people get upset. People yell at each other like, "Hey, you need to take some more. Everyone's taking some more. You need to take some more." And it comes back to one of the great things about Ranger School is it shows your true colors. They're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things, and this is where it comes back to peers. There are not a lot of schools where you're miserable for long enough to where it surfaces the type of person you are. There are plenty of people who are physical specimens that can pass rap week, and then they just turn into absolute turds out
Yeah.
in the field when it counts. It's like,
Right. Right.
congratulations, you can physically do the things. Maybe you were first in an obstacle course, this or that. But like when someone came by and said, "Hey, you need to carry more 7.62," and then you threw a hissy fit about it,
Uh,
everyone's paying attention to that, and you'll get peered. You'll get peered out of that phase for that. So,
yeah.
but yeah, we did cross load it. It becomes a point of contention. So that was Darby, and of course that lasted all the way through the heaviness of the ruck. So that was Darby, and then you go to I passed. Thank goodness I get to leave Fort Benning finally, because by the way I'm stationed there. So like finally I get to go somewhere new. Go up to Dahlonega. That's a bus ride. You go
Hmm.
up there. Everyone's passed out asleep. It's one of the few times you get to sleep. Um, so you get up to Dahlonega, they brief you when you first come in. Like one of the interesting they do for like shock value is they show you a topographic map of where you just were, the Darby phase. And like you've got the contour line. So a lot of people nowadays haven't seen a topographic map, but a topographic map shows you like the relief features and elevate, like changes in elevation. And you can
Yeah.
actually sort of discern terrain features based
Right.
on these lines that are on a map. And I think, what is it, 10 meters between lines or something
I
like
think
that?
that's about
There's some
right.
consistent like length. So, the closer lines are together, the more
The
steep
more
the
steep.
terrain
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
The wider apart they are, the more, gradual sloping or flat it is. So one of the things they do in that first brief when you got to mountain phase is they're talking, they show you a map of where you've been and you recognize it because you've been planning and operating on that map. So you're like, okay, that's Darby, and then they cut to the map of where you are currently, and the lines are just like
Oh,
right up on top of each other. And there's like an audible like whoa, like
yeah.
everyone was just holy crap, like where are we? And northern Georgia is quite mountainous. It's very mountainous. Um, so uh,
It's part of the Appalachian chain, isn't it? I think.
yeah, I think that's where it starts basically,
Yeah,
is in
yeah,
northern Georgia, and then so
yeah,
the Appalachian Trail starts there because you actually
yeah,
the different parts of your field exercise, you're actually walking like literally on the Appalachian Trail
yeah.
for sort of short parts of it.
It's a beautiful place. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, I later on was in that area, and it was beautiful, not in
Maybe
rainy
not
season.
beautiful when you were there.
So so yeah, so again, like just like the other phase, you get there and there's some training that happens first. One of the things that Mountain Phase is famous for is the rappelling training you do and the climbing training you do. So right there on the camp, there at the camp, there's like this sheer, like, I don't know, is it granite, whatever it is. There's a sheer wall. It's probably like, I don't know, 10. I can't, again, disclaimer for all my stories is that this was 2006 and I was very sleepy and hungry. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But it was like, I don't know, maybe like a six story high granite, like sheer face. And then you do like rappelling, and you
Mhm.
have to rappel by yourself, and you have to rappel like with somebody connected to you, like
Yeah,
to replicate if you were like rappelling with an injured person.
yeah.
um People get kicked out and recycled for knots. Knot tying is like a big thing in the mountain
Oh,
phase.
yeah, yeah.
So you have to show that you can appropriately tie the right type of knots, and
Hmm.
that you know how to do them, and that you're not a safety risk. So that's a part up front. Another interesting thing I wanted to mention about mountains is like the food. So the mountain phase of ranger school at my time was famous for blueberry pancakes. So when you were there doing the training stuff, you got to eat in that chow hall, and like you'd get so much food. And by the way, by now you've probably been in it for a few weeks, right? So you're starting to get lean, and you're doing
Uh-huh.
a lot of walking, and especially in mountains, because the mountains are just going to break you off. They try to plump you up again a little bit
Yeah,
before you hit your field exercises. So you get these huge breakfasts
yeah.
with like all grits, eggs, cereal,
All the good
everything,
stuff that we can't eat anymore.
and blueberry pancakes is what
Nice.
it's famous for. And like you eat everything, and
Well,
it's not like you're not limited on time necessarily. um you're not given all day. It's not a leisurely
right.
breakfast that you get to eat, but you get a lot of food, and everyone's just like pounding down
Oh,
all
yeah.
this food. You eat everything. Like before I went to ranger school, I had never tried grits. I always thought it looked gross. At ranger school, I have found a newfound appreciation for grits. So I eat grits today because of what happened to me in ranger school. But anyways, but talking about the food, like because it's so physically demanding, the mountain phase. Um, there's also an interesting thing that happens. So in terms of, you only get to eat twice a day when you're doing, I think it's the whole way through, but definitely during the field training exercises. And so then you eat a standard MRE, meal ready to eat. This is like camping food basically. I think most people probably know what MRE is by now, but you get two of them. Now what they do to you though is
Oh,
when you show up in your patrol base late at night, you eat, right? By the way, you eat while you're pulling security. So like half of the people can eat and the other people can't. You can only cram so much. And by the way, you're falling asleep. So you're not really eating your whole meal. And then when you wake up the next morning, so this is only like 4 hours later, you eat your second MRE, right? And this is all the way. So the rest of someone do the math for me, 18 hours, you don't eat, right? And this is where they start to get you. So you eat in like within like a 4 or 5 hour window your two MREs, and then you eat nothing the rest of the day.
yeah.
Except at mountain phase, when you're on your FTX, they let you do something called graze. So like if you have like something left over from your MRE and you're doing a movement and you're walking in the woods and you're not like actively taking contact, if you're chewing on something, like they allow it because that's how many calories you're burning throughout the day. Um, Now, if you're in Derby phase, the first phase or the third phase, and they catch you eating, you get kicked out. You'll fail that phase right there and then. So that's like an interesting thing about the mountain phase is that it's so physically punishing that
Yeah.
they relax the rule a little bit. You don't get more food, but while you're at the FTX, but they let you
Yeah.
graze during the day.
Every calorie counts.
So as an example of like where the mountains broke me off, um, there's one thing I remember specifically. So there are some days, and people enough people have gone to ranger school that you hear stories about specific days and specific movements that are especially like difficult. And one of the days is you go up the they call it the TVD, Tennessee Valley Divide. There's this very specific place where you're like just going, it feels like you're going straight up.
Mm.
Um, and smart people know or get a sense of when that day is coming, and they probably become riflemen. They probably don't become RTOs carrying a radio
Radio.
or like a machine gunner.
Right.
Well, PFC me,
Oh,
dummy,
yeah.
is not paying attention. I'm tired, whatever. And on the TVD day, I get stuck with forward observer. So I'm carrying a radio that day. And so, in addition to carrying rounds, in addition to carrying my stuff, I've got a radio in my backpack and extra batteries. And so, I have one. I think the radios are probably heavier. The machine guns, at least, you can put in front of you.
Yeah.
So, like you can sort of
Counterbalance.
balance yourself out. Like being the RTO or the FO, it's all on your back.
All on your
Period.
back.
And then you got a rifle. So I'm gonna go so far as to say that I had probably one of two of the heaviest loads on the TVD day. And
Nice.
so we do it, we go up, it's miserable, but like it was so painful that that at one point, like my eyes just started like uncontrollably watering, like I was crying. I wasn't crying. I wasn't
Yeah.
emotionally sad or depressed. I was just in such physical distress that my body was just like
Just
geysers,
dumping.
like just water coming out of my eyes. And I was like, I'm wiping my I'm wiping my eyes. I'm just so broke off,
Yeah.
climbing up this steep thing with this crazy heavy ruck on. That's how difficult it is. And I've heard and I hear a lot of tough guys who were SEALs, who are scout snipers, and I've pretty heard consistently they'll be like, yeah, I thought it was a joke up until I got to mountains. Like I was like, this
Yeah.
is easy, this is nothing. But the
Right.
mountain phase will break you off.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't doubt it. Yeah, I don't
So
doubt it because the hardest, some of the hardest stuff, just to interject,
yeah.
that we ever, well, some of them way up there at the top of the list of hard was we did winter warfare. And we had, oh, our rucks were from 90 to 100 pounds with snowshoes. And that was just misery. I mean,
Mhm.
absolute misery and weapons and amp. So yeah, that's some of the most torturous stuff ever.
But I always remember I always remember that day, and I laughed a little bit. I laughed a little bit because I was just like not because I just laughed because I was like, "Wow, I'm really" people talk about those moments where you mentally push back, push
Yeah,
past something physically, like, it is true. You can survive things your body gives up on or
totally.
says, like, "You've gone too far here." And that was like a moment where I was like, wow, like this,
It,
there's a limit and I've actually pushed past this limit. I didn't stop walking. Like I kept walking. I could continue to walk. It was just like a very odd moment to me,
odd
sort of a very
moment.
and everyone so broke off at that
Yeah.
point. Like, especially during that movement, there's no sense, like you're not pretending to care about the op four who might be out there. You're just trying to survive this
Yeah.
climb and
Right.
like everyone's in their own personal hell. And it was just like a very unique moment where I was like, okay, here it is. That was the limit. My body says that that was the limit, but we're still going and get
We're
to the
still,
top and you carry on.
man, I had a friend. This is, I'd never heard anybody explain it that way. I had a buddy when I was in graduate school who I talked into running a marathon with me in Los Angeles, and he had never run. He had never really run at all, but certainly not a long distance runner. And I mean, I got a PhD in long distance running by this time. And I said, no, we'll train for it. It'll take us a couple months. We'll be good. Well, that was me saying that. And the guy who's not a runner, but anyway, cutting to the chase here, to your point, we did the first 18 miler. Says we needed to do an 18 miler and then I think a 22 miler, and then we were ready. Be ready for the marathon. And he, I was pushing him because I wanted him to. I was pushing him the whole way, probably a little bit too much. So, and we were at like mile 16, 17. That's usually been getting close to where you hear what's called hitting the wall, quote unquote, and your body just stops doing things. It starts shutting down breaker switches on your internal, and he just started profusely. Tears were coming out, but he was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not crying, but there was like there was a flood out of his eyes, and it was like I've never seen anything like that. I'm like, no, I know, I can tell by your voice, but why are the tears coming out of your eyes? You're like, my body's doing something weird. But anyway, that's the only other time I've heard of something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to it is funny because there is like the little bit of like machismo where it's like
Yeah.
you're looking around like, I
Yeah.
swear I'm not crying. Like
I
I'm not
promise,
crying
guys.
about this.
Yeah.
Like it's okay.
Right.
So
Do you kick guys out of Rangers for crying?
and that was, that was mountain phase. I think I got a first time go. Like you get a couple opportunities. So um if they cycle through everybody and they don't, by the way, they don't tell you if you passed your patrol or not. They're not supposed to tell you. Sometimes they'll drop hints, whatever. Some people play it pretty straight face. So but I figured out that I passed my first patrol, so I was good to go. And then, of course, in mountain phase, you're doing platoon size operations. So you have a PL, platoon leader, and then you have multiple squads. And so the PL and the squad leaders are graded positions. I don't know if platoon sergeant is a thing. I don't think it is. So, um, so yeah, first time go there, and then you go to Florida. So usually you jump into the Florida phase. It was too windy, so we ended up just flying in, and we were all so happy about that.
Mm,
Because again, especially that deep into the course, you just don't want to get hurt
get
doing something
hurt.
stupid. And
No.
jumping into to the Florida phase is just like something you're not interested in doing. And by the
No.
way, there are some lucky folks who like hadn't been to air. You don't have to have gone to airborne school to go to ranger school. You can be we call it being a leg, and I think we talked about that in the
Yeah.
airborne school things. So a leg is anyone who just hasn't gone, who don't have their jump wings.
Yeah.
So so there's some folks who, so even if they would have never had to jump anyways. So we get to Florida, and I remember we fly into Eglin and we get out. And by the way, I went during the winter. So I went during, I'm there during the early part of the year in 2006. And we get out in Florida, the panhandle of Florida, and just like feel the warmth
Mm.
like wash over us. We're just like, oh yeah, this is great. Like we're so happy. We didn't have to jump. I just remember that's another great memory is when we're just sitting on the tarmac waiting to get picked up, and it's warm and there are palm trees and you're in Florida phase, and you just like it. That was like a very
Life
pleasant.
is good.
Life's good. Life's good. We're making it. So um so let me look at my notes here. Um, so another thing about, I talked about digging. I talked about having to dig in
Yeah.
each night. And so one of the great things about the Florida phase was that it's
Oh,
all sand,
sand.
right?
Yeah.
So we felt like we were
Whoop
spoiled. Like
de doo. Yeah.
we were just so excited that we could just easily dig in, and like especially it's getting later in the course, and like guys are starting to get weird. Guys are really starting to get weird from being sleep deprived for that long.
Yeah.
Again, it's 62 days if you go straight through. People recycle, things happen. Like guys start to get really weird towards the end. And I
Yeah.
remember seeing like some very complex like fighting positions. So usually you dig like a shallow, basically like a body deep sort of I don't know, like a sort of oblong size hole, and that's what you sleep in, and that's what you fight out of. Enough so that way you can get down and
Yeah.
shoot over it.
Like a
But
coffin
like
size.
a coffin, we'll say coffin size. But then I saw, because the sand was so easy to dig in, and these guys, it's been so used to digging in clay, Georgia clay. Like I remember one, actually the one where I was a PL, and I'll loop back around and tell this story more cleanly in a second. But like they had built like something with like a seat in it, like they could go into it. They dug like a proper like
Yeah.
Vietnam style like machine gun position, like with a shelf, that they
Oh, that's
sat in and could look out into it. It got very weird. I'll circle back real quick to talk about like so again, you get to Florida phase and there's classes at first, right? And so some of the things you do up front, which are sort of famous things. So one thing is the reptile show. So one of your first days there, they do like a environmental acclimation thing, and they show you all the animals that can kill you
yeah.
while you're out there operating out in their AO. So they've got like they've got like snakes and alligators and all kinds of stuff that they show you. And it's supposed to like keep your attention. But again, it's like another weird thing because everyone's so sleepy. Like it
Oh,
doesn't matter that you caught some Z's on the plane. Like you just can't make up sleep with that type of deprivation.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the classroom setting, we're sitting in there, guys like falling
Yeah,
asleep
no.
as they're like falling asleep. Like a guy's coming by with like a crocodile, like a baby crocodile, and like the dude's like just asleep. It's very weird. Another thing you do during that time though is like the the boats. You do like the boats and like the swamp crossing. Actually, I
Mhm.
don't know if that happens during the first. I think they do that. I don't think they do it as a mission during the FTX. I think they do that during that first week. I can't remember, but that's also like a famous thing that you do. So you actually get out like the rubber, like you play Navy SEAL for a day, and you get
Yeah.
out like the rubber boats, and you get your
Yep.
paddles, and then you go like going down. You go down a river on paddles with your gear, and you figure out how to do that and how to lift the boats and how to put a machine gunner at the bow and all that type of
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
But again, we're so sleepy, like I barely remember it. I definitely remember that I had a paddle, and I definitely remember that one of the jobs of someone was to keep the machine gunner awake at the bow because
Paddles is good.
they would just fall asleep. Um,
Yeah.
so um, and the sleep thing, I guess I haven't talked that much about it. So if I take a half step back to mountain phase, there, you know, the sleep deprivation gets weird. It gets to a point where um, you lose track of time. Like you're really deep into it. You lose track of time. There was we did there's one movement you do in the mountain phase where I guess you're just sort of following them. It's kind of like a forced march.
Mhm.
So, and a forced march is basically where like you're you're not worried about security. You know you have relative security. You're trying to get someplace from one place to another, just hoofing it, just walking. And so the RIs lead you to a place where you're gonna where everybody congregates. And it was late at night and everyone's just walking. And I remember like walking, and if we stopped for a second, I kept falling asleep standing up.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I kept like if we stopped, I couldn't
Y
keep myself awake,
yeah.
and then someone would like hit me in the back of my head, and
Yeah.
I'd wake up and I'd be like staring straight at a tree, and then they'd be like, Hey, go, go," and I have to like look around to look for like the red lens
Right.
flashlights, and then I'd like run up and um and there was specifically a time where like there was we call it a breaking contact where people it's always in ranger school it's because they fell asleep. Someone was walking and fell asleep while they were walking. Again with the ruck
Who
with
has
the
a rock
rucksack
on?
on. So you
Oh,
just fall asleep, you know? And
get it.
so this is the type of sleep deprivation. And by the time you're like it happens on you pretty quickly. Like you'll feel it in Darby, but by the time you're in mountains, like it's really set in.
Getting
And
real.
yeah, right. So we're in we're in Florida, and um, I talked about just how things are getting weird. Guys are digging like weird. You're having really weird conversations. Like I would have songs stuck in my head, and I would sing them out loud. Like I'm not much of a singer, but everyone just gets really weird. It was Nelly Furtado. If anyone remembers her, like I would just have her song stuck in my head, and I'd just be singing it to myself. And the weird thing would be like if I were doing checks, if I were going around the patrol base, I'd walk by, and then there would be some other guy on the opposite of the patrol base who'd be singing that song. So like the song stuck in my head, like got to him, or maybe it came the other way around. But all that
Subliminal things are going on, man.
that to say is so things are getting weird. So for me, we do Florida phase. I do a couple missions. I don't remember them at all. Second to last day. Now, when you get to the last couple days and you get a patrol, you're put in a leadership position. It's either because you did such a great job, they're trying to they're trying to put you in a position to help someone else get their go,
Yeah.
or or you're the person who needs a go and it's the last couple of days and you're in trouble. So
Uh,
second to last day, I get planning PL. So that means, and I'm like, okay, I definitely failed my other patrol. And I think I might have had two. I think I
mhm.
might have had two. I think this might have been my third one. So I was like, wow, I'm in trouble. It's the second to last day. And I got
Mhm.
planning PL. So um like once I figured out that I was like blade running basically and I was about to fail, like it was I just the gloves came off and I was like, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
So like one of the interesting things is they let me choose who my squad leaders were and who different folks were. Actually, no, they choose the leadership positions, but you can choose who
Yeah.
who the other roles are.
Yeah. Who
So
does
I
what?
would so by that time, you know your squad pretty well. I was like, okay, my RTO and my FO are going to be the two company commanders, the two
Yeah.
captains, the O4s. Like
Right.
you two are helping me plan this thing. And
Right.
so I had a field artillery captain who was
Nice.
my FO, and I had an engineer captain who was my RTO.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and we all know what the game is. We don't need to say anything. And they basically helped me. They basically helped me pass because I was the planning PL. Now, usually they don't put privates in that position just
Right.
because I'm a PFC. What do I know about planning? Come to find out that they never. I guess the RIs never quite figured out who I was, like what group I was with, and I think they thought that I was just some sort of goofball infantry lieutenant.
Haha.
Because finally, because I do the planning mission and I get through it, and finally, guys like, "What unit are you with?" He just straight up asked me. I was like, "I'm with 375, Sergeant." He's like, "Really?" He's like, "Okay." Because when we had taken contact in that morning in the patrol base, like again, my hair was on fire because I was like, "I gotta get out of here." So like we were taking contact in the patrol base, and instead of sitting back and trying to orchestrate it from behind like a good officer is supposed to do,
Mhm.
like I had run up to the fighting position that was in contact, and I dive in like I was going all out like GI Joe, like dive into the fighting position to try to like orchestrate the fires and all that. And finally, the RI was like, "Dude, what unit are you in?" I was like, "I'm a private from 375." He's like, "Oh,
Hilarious.
okay," and he did that. He's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "All right," and so
Now we know the rest of the story.
so yeah, so they probably just thought I was like this, like I'm a private.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I'm failing some of these planning things. So, anyways,
Yeah.
um, I plan the mission. We do that in the morning, and then one thing I haven't talked about is you swap in the middle of the day. By the way, so the person who plans the mission isn't that's not the same leadership that executes the mission that night.
Gotcha.
So they execute it. They do a great job. Um, and then I find out I get my go. And then one of the interesting things is that for an RI ranger instructor on their last walk, they call it the last walk. There are always rumors about like, oh, if it's an RI's last walk, he always gives out goes, and he might give you like a Snickers or something like that, right? Because
Nice.
food is such a
Right.
commodity. And
Yep.
so that night we do the mission, we execute it, and it is my RI's last walk. Now, I like to think that I did a great job, right? Delegating to the captains,
Sure.
delegating to the company commanders to execute to help me plan the mission, and then we did it. But maybe it was just because it was last. It was just because it was last walk. But so we're out there in the middle of nowhere, and he's got like hot dogs to grill up and like
Nice.
Snickers can't. Seriously, it's a
Oh
real
boy.
thing. The last walk was a real thing for me, at least.
No
So
sound.
then I knew I was good. I was like, all right,
Yeah. Sure.
regardless, it's this guy's last walk. He's giving us hot dogs. Of course I
For
got my
sure.
go.
Yeah.
You know
For
what I mean?
sure. Good
So,
feeling.
and that was a great feeling. And so the next day was like the last day, and we're closing up here. Next day was the last day, and it was like a company assault on an airfield. Um, and I haven't even talked about Santa Rosa Island, but I barely remember that because I was sleeping most of it. But we do this company assault on it, and I just remember like that being a great day. It was bright, it was sunny out. It was like I wasn't in a leadership position. I was trying to hold up my end. I think I was like a machine gunner or something. But I just remember that feeling of like because we did that objective where we basically just ran across this airfield. Like we're all so sleepy and out of it. And then
Yeah.
they're like, "All right, you're done." And we're done not because we're not going to another patrol base. They're like, "All right,
Yeah.
here's some buses, get on the bus, you know you're done." So
It's a kind of, do you find that because it's kind of like the graduation at Buds, just underwhelmingly anticlimactic? you've been like right on the precipice. I mean, you feel good, but it's just like, what was that?
I, for Rip, I definitely it felt anticlimactic. Not so much anticlimactic as it was like I just the foreboding that came with
Yeah.
showing up to the
Oh,
company.
all right.
But with Ranger School, I was going back to the people that I knew. I knew that I had passed a big milestone in a Ranger's career, and my life should be a little bit better.
Mhm.
And I was riding pretty high
Yeah.
after graduation and coming back. Some bad things happened while I was away at school and while my platoon was out in Afghanistan. When we pick back up with that
Yeah.
story, I'll talk more about that. But for that moment, I was just like,
Yeah.
whoa. I was
You're
like,
walking
whoa,
on
dude, I just
sunshine.
got my Ranger tab.
Dude, that's huge. And that answers a lot of my well, I don't know if they're questions, but just I had always heard this and that and the other about Ranger School. And it was always the two things I remember was hungry and tired, sleep deprived. We're and humping, but that contributed to both of those.
Yeah.
But that's now I see it. Yeah, I see it clearly.
It was an interesting time. I'm glad to have done it. Um, I'm glad to have graduated. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was, it's one of those rare times in the military where something lives up to what you thought it was. Ranger School did that for me,
Yeah.
100%.
Well, as we say, hoo-yah to Patrick, he made it.
I made it, and then we'll go. So in the next one, I think we're going to talk about that book
Yeah.
we've been talking about, and then we'll pick back up with the story and we'll talk about what happened after Ranger School. So thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you in the next one.